Welcome back to another edition of the MMA Junkie Q&A. I am Mike Bohn. It is May 12th, Tuesday. I'm joined by John Morgan, Nolan King on this week's edition, and we are in the midst of a double fight week. John Morgan on the ground there in Jacksonville. John, just off the top, give us the update, man. How are you doing? Obviously, two fight cards coming up this week, a few days removed from UFC 249. Is that hotel room feeling like a prison cell for you yet?
Bro, you don't even know, man. It's Groundhog Day every single day. When you started naming out the date, I was like, thank God you're saying it because I have no clue at this point, man. It's been down here a week. And, listen, man, following the rules, and that is basically don't leave the property. The only time I've left the hotel is to go over to the arena for fight night. And, been staying in the room. There's basically, there's restaurants here to go eat at real quick. But you don't hang out afterwards. You're asked not to congregate, all those things. So yeah, man. Listen, UFC 249 was fantastic, man. I mean, we could talk about that briefly, but I got a little emotional when Sam Alvey was walking out, just to be back to a little bit of a sense of normalcy. You know what I mean? It felt good. So it felt good to have live fights again. But I will say this: as excited as I am for the next two cards, as happy as I am to be covering live MMA again, I am also absolutely ready to get out of this damn hotel room and get back to Las Vegas.
No doubt. And has it just been, we spoke about this last week, pretty in depth about the process, but being there, going into, another fight week, new fighters arriving, some new UFC staff people, corner and everything. What have the past couple days looked like since UFC 249 and I guess going into tomorrow's show?
Yeah, everybody's, coming in, like you said. I mean, the new fighters, new UFC staff, everybody's having to get their tests. So it's kind of funny. You're getting a whole new batch of people that are just getting a swab stuck up their nose for the first time. They're like, dude, what is that? I'm like, I know, right? It's crazy. So everybody's kind of experiencing that for the first time, which is still a bizarre feeling. But, you're seeing everybody get used to it. Man, I got to say, like, at this point, I've been doing it a week. I've basically been, again, self-isolating in my room. Keeping the mask on at all times. The only reason I don't have my mask on right now is because I'm in my room by myself. But anytime I step out that door under any circumstances, I've got the mask on. I'll wear that at all times, even through the media sessions. But what's funny is you get used to it really quick. So what I'm seeing right now, all those new people come in, they're seeing what the setup is like and how the system works and how you have to act and what you have to do. And the rest of us are kind of like leading by example, I guess, a little bit or showing the time. And so you get used to it really, really fast. It doesn't feel that weird to me anymore to wear the mask. At first, I'll be honest, I hadn't been wearing a mask through this whole process. And I guess that's I feel like I'm not in the real world right now. When I get back to Vegas, like where I actually live and I can get outside of this hotel room, I guess that's kind of what you're required to do now when you step out of your house, at least where we live in Las Vegas. And it's kind of cool. Like I don't really feel awkward anymore. I know that may sound silly, but it used to feel weird putting the damn thing on and going out. But now you just know, man, that's life as it is. And it's been interesting to kind of talk to people and get a feel for, how they think the future is going to look, because I think most people, kind of think this is going to be the way for a while. And this, this crowd, this MMA is something that we probably need to get used to, because I think it's just going to be mostly crowdless sports in general.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy here in Toronto, too. Like, you can't even go into any stores now without wearing a mask. You have the option of, like, going outside if you want to walk, obviously, around the streets or anything. But, yeah, they're getting pretty tight. Anyone who is in here watching, of course, feel free to ask questions in the live chat. We'll get to them as we go through here. Nolan, how are we holding up there, brother?
Doing all right. John's talking about Groundhog Day, and here I am stuck in my house doing the same thing. We can't even go outside here without masks on. We have to have them walking on the sidewalk. If you go for a run or if you're on your bike, you have to wear them. So it's felt very Groundhog Day-ish for me too. But even being all the way up here in the Northeast, a whole coastline away from Florida, having the UFC back last week definitely giving me the sense of normalcy that I needed. I should be totally thrown off by the fact that we have 3 events in 8 days. That my weekly clock should be all over the place, and I'm excited though. This is for better or worse. You can disagree with them coming back or think that they should have done things better, but there is a lot of positives to take away from the UFC holding events, and the sense of normalcy and relief that I feel from being able to have something to look forward to. And I wouldn't trade it, man. I'm doing all right in that regard.
Yeah, and we can get into obviously these two fight cards coming up this week in a little bit. But first, I want to talk a little UFC 249. We've had a couple days to resonate on the performances, the fights. John, I just want to ask you, you being cage side for a whole ton of fights, a lot of championship fights, where's Justin Gaethje's performance rank among the best title fight efforts you've seen?
Phenomenal, man. That was absolutely flawless, man. The way he came in there, he was an absolute savage. I mean, the shots that he was landing were incredible. And of course, you know, I said it on the fight night, but I'll say it again. I mean, not having a crowd, it almost made it more intense in a way. You know, sure, you missed a little bit of the fan reaction. But I mean, being able to hear the weight of those shots, every single blow, man, it was pretty incredible. And just the way he responded, man, you could tell the trust that he has with Trevor Whitman, and you know, with Whitman, you know, making it clear, hey, don't go out there and try to kill him with every shot. Settle down a little bit, back 10% off. You know, just executing phenomenally. I will say I thought Tony Ferguson looked a little bit flat. You know, a lot of people speculated, you know, maybe that was the additional weight cut that he went through. Did that have any impact on his performance? Maybe. I mean, it definitely, I can't imagine it helped in any way, but I don't know if that was really to blame. I think also, you know, just the fact that he had been on this long, exhausting ride of, you know, scheduled and off and moved here and over there and all. I mean, I can't imagine how, you know, he wasn't, you know, mentally drained as well as physically drained after he admitted what was a very long training camp and a change in style of opponent. So I mean, you know, for Tony Ferguson, I think that, you know, there are some reasons why maybe he didn't look as good as he should have, but none of that should take away from Justin Gaethje, man. Justin looked phenomenal, and I just love that the guy continues to mature in the cage. He continues to mature outside of the cage. I mean, he is absolute must-watch TV. I mean, we've talked about it, those in the know, for a long time, but I feel like the casuals are now starting to see this guy and get to know how exciting he is. And it's funny because, you know, of course, at least for the time being, we've lost Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson, the fight we'd all been waiting for years to see. But I'll be honest, man, like, as disappointing as that may be, I'm so enthused for the idea of Justin Gaethje versus Khabib Nurmagomedov that I don't feel that disappointed, man. Justin Gaethje looks like he has absolutely all the tools that you might want to beat Khabib. Now, whether or not he'll be able to go out there and execute, we'll see. But man, I'm excited. And man, as you said, to go back to your original question, that performance, you just can't say enough about it, man. I thought Gaethje was pretty much flawless.
Dude, yeah, it was so good. I mean, he took 136 significant strikes from Tony Ferguson in that fight, and he barely looked like he even got in a fight, really. I mean, just a few scratches and stuff like that. Pretty wild. I think what John said there, Nolan, takes us pretty well into our first question from me, Diamond 44. You guys think Tony Ferguson will end up regretting that he didn't wait for Khabib? I mean, obviously, hindsight, it's kind of easier to say that now, but I mean, you look through the attention he got. I'm sure he got a nice payday along with it. You reported the salaries last night, Nolan. We know that's not, you know, the complete crux of what he ends up getting. But I mean, if you're Tony Ferguson now on this Tuesday, are you sitting there just kicking yourself with regret, or do you think, you know, maybe he's content with himself?
I think it's tough to get inside the mind of Tony Ferguson. He doesn't necessarily think about things in conventional ways, but if it was me, I would be kicking myself. It didn't seem like a smart idea at the time, and it turned out that it didn't pay off in the end. So if I'm Tony Ferguson, I am kicking myself. I lost out on a major payday with Khabib. I know he got compensated well for his fight against Gaethje, but at what cost? You know, at what did he miss out with the Khabib fight? So for me, man, I mean, it was a high risk, lower reward fight for him. He would have got the fight with Khabib afterwards, but that's where he started out at. So, you know, I can't help but feel bad for the guy. Clearly missed out on an opportunity that may never come back. I don't think that we'll ever have a time where two guys line up like that again on such like long win streaks. So that fight was super promotable, and now we missed out on it. Tony missed out on the payday, and he might never get that next shot to fight for an actual championship belt again.
Yeah, it's a real tough one for Tony, man. I mean, John, what do you think? Like, I'm sure there's so many sides to it. He could get right back there. I mean, one win, who knows? But as Nolan kind of hinted to there, this was it, man. Like 12-fight winning streak versus 12-fight winning streak in the UFC, the same division. That's never happened before. For all we know, it could maybe never even happen again, the way, people are put into title fights and the way matchmaking is done now. I mean, it just seems like it had it all. All the ingredients were there. And I agree with you that I thought I'd maybe be a little more bummed out at this time that, like, for Tony Ferguson, we may not even see that fight. But Justin Gaethje just did so much to really build his own case and intrigue. But if you're Tony Ferguson, how are you feeling right now, and what would you say would be the next move coming from this?
Yeah, hopefully the next move is some rest, right? I mean, he said he was exhausted afterwards. It was a long camp. He certainly took a lot of damage. So hopefully the next move isn't getting back in there anytime soon. I'd love to have him take some time. He took some big shots in that fight. Obviously the broken orbital, man, that's problematic as well. So I'd love to see him take some time. Listen, I get the sentiment that he should, might be feeling some regret, all that was missed. But at the same time, I think Tony did what he had to do. I think he did the only, under normal circumstances, and I don't just mean the pandemic. I mean, obviously, none of us know what's going to happen in the future because of this, damn COVID-19 stuff that's changed everything. So that's one thing. But just the fact that you tried to make this fight 5 times, and I'm not going to sit here, it's cursed and all that. That's a joke. That's fun to play around with. It's not cursed, but it sure as hell didn't ever happen. And so I think if it was a fight that, maybe it was the first time or the second time, maybe you go, oh, well, I better wait. I don't think there should be any regret. I think Tony did what he had to do, man. There was an opportunity to fight, an opportunity to compete, an opportunity to claim a title. And you don't know what the future is going to look like. You don't know what the future of the world is going to look like. The future of the organization is going to look like. The future schedule is going to look like. So I think he took advantage of, the opportunity he had to compete and, put some money in the bank. He's got to put food on the table. And you really don't know also about the conversations that happen behind the scenes as well. I mean, perhaps there was a situation where Tony said, guys, I'd really like to wait. And the UFC said, yeah, but, we sure would like for you to compete. We need a main event. How about we throw a couple extra dollars in your pocket for making that happen? There's all sorts of other things could happen. So, I don't think he needs to feel regret. I think hopefully he's got the right mindset. We'll be interested to see how he deals with it. He has not dealt with defeat in quite some time. Sometimes that makes people stronger. We'll see. But next move right now, get some rest, man. Take some time, let things shake out a little bit. See what kind of matchups are out there that make the most sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Rest is the first thing. I mean, he did suffer a broken orbital bone. We confirmed that on MMA Junkie yesterday. His surgery incoming, that he's going to be out for a little bit. And you just never know how that can affect a fighter going forward. I mean, I always think of the Josh Koscheck GSP when he broke that orbital. And he was never really the same when he got in there and, just worrying about taking hits to the eyes and stuff. But, John, you mentioned kind of, maybe they had Tony Ferguson step up so they could have a main event for this pay-per-view and everything. We talked about this last week a little bit. Someone asked us what we thought the pay-per-view buys, the viewership and stuff would be like for this card. We've had a little bit of information come out today, Sports Business Journal reporting that this could have seen upward of 700,000 buys on the ESPN Plus platform. That's not including real pay-per-view buys from countries like myself in Canada, Australia, et cetera, et cetera. Seems like this was a home run. Are you, John, surprised by the pay-per-view numbers that are being reported out there, or do you think this is kind of in line with what we were talking about last week and your expectations?
No, I'll tell you what, I am surprised. I mean, that's an impressive number. I kind of said all along I thought it would do good, but not record-breaking. So I guess, that qualifies. It did good, but not record-breaking. But I wasn't thinking 700,000 buys. I was thinking 600 would be really strong. I mean, that would be really, really good. Let's not forget, we're in this kind of new era of pay-per-view. But, man, that is a huge, huge number. And I think really just goes to show how starved the world was for sport. You know what I mean? I mentioned – this whole past week, man, I was doing so many interviews with like mainstream radio stations and that were talking about MMA and they didn't normally talk about MMA. They don't normally cover MMA, but there's nothing else going on, so they got out there. I think we heard there was some wagering sites set records for how many wagers they took on a fight card. And it was a great fight card, don't get me wrong, but I think it just goes to show you the thirst that people have for live sport. People are ready for this stuff to get back in their life and have some kind of entertainment. And that is a huge number for these two guys who, again, I mean, hardcores, we all knew Tony Ferguson was great. We all knew Justin Gaethje was great, but neither one of them are mainstream stars to the casual fans. So for them to come together for this type of number, man, you got to think everybody involved is just absolutely ecstatic about it.
Yeah, not one real proven draw on this. I mean, I think only like one guy who's headlined a pay-per-view prior, or maybe two guys, I think Cejudo and Ferguson. So, yeah, I mean, that would have been a good number even back in the old pay-per-view model day. I think that was similar to what like Brock Lesnar and Alistair Overeem drew at UFC 141. And I think going off that, Nolan, we do have 2 more fight cards this week. one on ESPN Plus Wednesday, Saturday on ESPN. What type of carryover do you think we have here? Like, was this, pay-per-view buys doing good numbers, the ESPN prelims, all that? Was that just, a kind of one-time thing because everyone was so hungry for sports? Or is this going to carry over? Were the people who are watching UFC 249 seeing the promos for Anthony Smith and Glover Teixeira and say, hey, there's another card in 4 days, I'm going to be watching this one as well, and they're still hungry for sports? Or do you think it was just UFC 249 really caught a certain level of momentum because it was the quote-unquote first event back after the COVID-19 pandemic hit?
I think it's going to carry over. I mean, you have the crowd of people that watched the event. It went great. I mean, I think the people that I talk to in my life that are not MMA fans, they all seem to think the event was a home run. So if they're saying that and we're saying that, I think there's a good chance that some of the viewership comes back. Plus, you have the whole group of people that either A, didn't want to order the pay-per-view, didn't want to pay for it, or B, didn't know that it was on. And now they have the opportunity to just turn on their TV and load up a fight night on a Wednesday. What else do people have to watch on a Wednesday night that like sports right now? So I think Wednesday and Saturday we'll see the effects from that. I expect big numbers from both cards. I know, obviously the 249 pay-per-view is a card that was stacked from up, top to bottom, and these are more of your traditional fight night cards. But I think people are interested, man. I think people want the live sports. I think we saw it from our traffic perspective. I think the UFC saw it from their buy perspectives. Social media was blowing up. So, I mean, I have no sign to say that this isn't going to do well, that it isn't going to be to scale for the fight night comparison compared to the pay-per-view. So I think that both these cards, I think the UFC are going to knock them out of the park too, relative to what they are.
Yeah, curious to see how those numbers look. I mean, obviously Saturday is the big one, kind of big ESPN. I don't know, how many casuals, quote unquote, are tuned into ESPN Plus again, but I guess we'll ultimately see on Wednesday. But as we kind of look back at UFC 249 a little bit more, co-main event, Henry Cejudo beats Dominick Cruz in a somewhat controversial fashion. I mean, there's so many angles to this. I actually do want to start with the Dominick Cruz stuff because I don't think we really addressed it too much from a personal opinion side. When he comes out, I mean, I'm sitting there watching the post show on ESPN, and he does this interview with Megan O'Leary, and he basically says, he's questioning the stoppage and then says the guy smelled like cigarettes and alcohol. And Megan O'Leary's even like, what? Did he really? Like, she was taken off the guard at that moment by that comment. And then, of course, my head turned and read that a little bit and put it out, and it's blown up and everything. So unusual comments. I mean, John, you're on the road. I mean, I guess you see some of these refs a little more, or maybe talk to them behind the scenes. I mean, what do you make of Dominick Cruz's comments there? Kind of a little bit of, I think as John Anik put it in his tweet, character assassination on Keith Peterson, who from all accounts is a very good referee. That seemed to be the consensus from a lot of people after this too.
Yeah, I feel bad, man, because I think it was me that actually smelled like cigarettes and alcohol, and maybe just bled over there, and Dominick was smelling that. So I just want to send apologies to Keith Peterson. That was probably my fault. But no, listen, man, I hate that, man. And Dominick Cruz, man, I think of him as such a classy guy, man, and a great analyst, and all those things that he does. And man, this did feel like a bit of a character assassination on him, man. But if it's true and it's accurate, then I don't know what to say. I mean, I think Keith Peterson does smoke, so. I mean, if he smelled like cigarettes, it wouldn't shock me. As far as the alcohol goes, I don't know. I don't think he was drinking ahead of time or anything like that. So I certainly hope that wasn't the insinuation. I mean, I have enjoyed a frosty beverage or two with Mr. Peterson at times on the road, but I would never imagine him doing something like that before a fight night, man. That's just not who he is. He is committed to the craft. He is a fantastic official, and I don't know. I thought it was a damn shame, but if it's what Dominick observed, it's what Dominick observed. As far as his performance there, I'll be honest with you, I didn't hate the stoppage live, man. Seeing it, that knee definitely had Dominick hurt. And then as he went down, punches are coming and they're following up, and he's kind of at a weird angle against the cage. He's taking some damage. So I didn't have a problem with the stoppage immediately. Now, a lot of people point to, well, there's only 2 seconds left in the round. I always advise people, remember, officials are not to consider at all what the amount of time left is in a round is. If it's 4:59.9 and you feel like the fighter is not intelligently defending himself, you stop the fight. So just always remember, when you're evaluating, that is not in the official's job description to consider how much time is remaining. Now, do you feel that he could have carried on? Man, it sure looked like it, right? I mean, Dominick was instantly protesting, and so it seemed like he was with it. So then when you start to look at it again, you start to watch the replay, you go, oh, okay, yeah, maybe it was a little bit problematic. Maybe this was a little premature. So, it's a terrible situation. I feel bad for Dominick Cruz, man. I know that, that was his big moment. I hope that Dominick comes back. I know he said he will. I think there are more title fights ahead for him. I really, I think I didn't see anything that made me think he still can't perform at a top level. And it looks like if Henry Cejudo really is walking away, we're going to have a bantamweight title to put up for grabs sometime in the near future. So, maybe we'll get a chance to see him in a title fight again. In the meantime, I was checking out the chat and I was just looking at Top MMA Prediction. I was trying to find out what Top MMA Prediction thought about Edmen Shahbazyan. I'm unsure. Number one, stop denying it, John Warrior. All right, fair enough. I like Edmen Shahbazyan. He's phenomenal. I said earlier, it was like you don't ever interview Edmen Shahbazyan. That is not true. I've been interviewing Edmen Shahbazyan. I think I've interviewed him before every fight. In fact, most times he's just sitting there by himself. Now he's starting to get a little hype around him, but I remember many media days where he was just standing there all by himself. And I went over there and went and talked to him and did some interviews with him. Yes, Top MMA Prediction. I get it. Edmen Shahbazyan, number one. How many times you got? Thank you. Okay, I'm feeling better now.
He was in here last week, too. He is a big-time Shahbazyan fan. And I think we do have a somewhat recent interview with him done by Farah Hanun on our website and our YouTube page. So if you are thirsty for the Edmen Shahbazyan content, I think we have something on there. And granted, I mean, he was supposed to be on the Portland card, right? So I wonder why he didn't get rebooked for either of these two events. But nonetheless, I kind of want to – oh, go ahead, John.
Let me just say one thing, since we are talking about Edmen Shahbazyan. Listen, since Top MMA Prediction has posted there like 500 times about it, I will say this, man. The fact that Israel Adesanya is already mentioning his name, don't think that that's an accident, okay? The fact that he's mentioned his name means that's a fight that Israel sees as something to – and now we got to make a prediction on it? Damn you, Top MMA Prediction. I tell you what. Right now, I like Israel Adesanya because I feel like Edmen Shahbazyan is still kind of rounding out a little bit, but man, you give him another couple of fights, and he, I don't think he has quite the experience that he needs at this point. But give him a couple more fights, that's going to be a hell of a fight. And I'm telling you, there's a reason Israel is saying his name. Remember when Israel said Eric Kinnear versus Anderson Silva, and we were all like, "What are you talking about? That's a silly matchup." And what happened? There's a reason he's talking about this.
This man knows it, man. That could be, just hypothetically speaking, you have like a 20-0 Israel Adesanya versus a 15-0 Edmen Shahbazyan. That's, magic. And in terms of booking a title fight, everything you could really ask for and more. But I do want to circle back to the Dominick Cruz thing and just get your take, Nolan. A comment here from Pablo05, not really a question, but it says, "It really sucks. You waiting 4 years to fight, battling injuries, and your dream is eliminated by a dumb ref." I mean, we can talk about the stoppage all we want. I think John really summed it up well. I mean, he was getting to his feet, but Henry Cejudo wasn't just going to stop punching him. And if time ran out, then maybe that could have been the saver there. But as John mentioned, you don't really count on the clock or have that in your mind when you're going to stop a fight. But if you're Dominick Cruz, what do you do from here? I mean, Nolan, if you truly feel this way about the referee and that he was maybe not in a competent state of mind and maybe took something away from you, how do you act on that? I mean, I don't think just going out and saying it in a few interviews is going to do anything. I mean, I think if this happened in another sport, like LeBron James said, I think we lost that fight or that game because, the referee didn't call an appropriate foul because he smelled like alcohol or something. That would be like the biggest story in the world. That would be absolutely crazy. So I think in just MMA is such a wild west, it kind of gets swept under the rug a little more than it would in another sport. But I mean, if you really believe this, I think if you're Dominick Cruz, this is something you maybe, take a legal approach, go to the commission or something. And if you're Keith Peterson, I don't know what you do there. I mean, I think there could be some sort of legal case there if this guy's dragging your name through the mud, especially if it's inaccurate. So what do you make and what actually happens here? And do you think anything happens here?
Yeah, 100%. You hit it on the head. I'll be interested to see what Keith comes out, if he comes out and says any type of statement. I know some commissions don't allow their referees or officials to really comment on matters. I'm not sure if that will be the same with Mr. Peterson, but for a guy that was an alcoholic or a dumb referee, made a pretty good stoppage there because I thought that was fine. I thought that I think people get too hung up on stoppages being perfect. I think you got to look at stoppages more of being a range. There's a certain range I think a referee can get away with an acceptable stoppage from the time that it could be, early to late. So for me, it was on the earlier side of an acceptable stoppage. Dominick was taking a lot of shots, and I totally get his frustration to have all those injuries throughout your career, have to come back, get another opportunity to try to go out there and win a title, and have it end like that. Definitely frustrating, but it was very disappointing from my end to hear a guy that is as intelligent as Dom kind of come out and seemingly, throw some accusations out there, which, like John said, if they're true, they're true. But it just seemed to me there was a little bit of extra salt on a lot of the stuff that he was saying. And I don't know where he goes from here. I mean, it's lucky for him that Cejudo is, if Cejudo actually does retire and that belt becomes vacant, I mean, Dom he could have one fight outside of a title picture and then jump right back into it, get a title shot. So we'll see what happens. I don't think an appeal is going to help him at all. So I'm sure it might as well just be worth his while to throw it out there and go through the appeal process. But we know how that goes in MMA. But yeah, I think until Cejudo definitively gives up that belt, we're not really going to know what the next move is for Dominick Cruz.
Yeah, and I mean, we have kind of weird conflicts of interest all over the sport in certain ways, but I'm very curious to see the next time Dominick Cruz is on a commentary for a Keith Peterson ref fight, what that'll look like and what he'll ultimately say there. But you guys both mentioned it, and I do want to get into it a little bit. Henry Cejudo makes this surprise retirement, and he said earlier in the week he wants to be the Michael Jordan of MMA, and maybe he meant that in a different way than any of us really understood in terms of retiring at a fairly young age and in a surprising fashion when he's at the top of his game, winning a third championship fight in a row here. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but I don't know. I mean, Henry Cejudo, he's said to me in some interviews in the past couple of years that he feels that he is underpaid and he wants to be making big money from the UFC, and that he's willing to walk away if he doesn't get what he wants. And he has once proven that he can walk away from a sport when he is at the top in wrestling. Granted, he's not leaving a ton of money on the table there. It's a completely different situation. I think there's a lot of elements to this, but hearing from the likes of Daniel Cormier, I heard King Mo talk about it. Like, they've seen this guy do that before. They think he is sincere in this. John, I'll throw it to you. What do you think? Do you think we have seen Henry Cejudo's last fight?
So I think so. It's shocking. I know it wouldn't surprise me if he comes back. Of course, that always is the case with MMA retirements. But at first, when he said it in the cage, immediately I thought, negotiation tactic here. I see what he's doing, man. This guy's holding out for some more money, which good for him. I mean, I think Henry Cejudo has done a fantastic job of both competing and in marketing himself, man. Love him or hate him, the Triple C, the king of cringe, man. He got people talking about him, and I think he did it in normally a pretty fun way. Although I said, on Instagram earlier this week, I'm sure that his opponents wanted to slap the shit out of him because he's just so annoying at times. But I thought he was pretty entertaining, if I'm being honest. So, but what sold me on the fact that maybe it was the real deal was during the post-fight press conference when he was talking about it. And I looked over to the side, and Eric Abrahamson was over there, his longtime coach. Those guys have been together since he was a teenager. And Eric was crying, man. He was wiping away tears, and you could see the real emotion. And I don't know if you saw Eric earlier in the week. He's not even an actor. He got a call from Dr. Fauci while we were talking at one point. He's not very good as an actor. So I don't think he was playing around here, man. I think he was sincerely broken up about this and believes that he's done. So, would it shock me if Cejudo comes back? No, it wouldn't. But it wouldn't shock me if he doesn't, because I tell you what, I think he was earnest in the statement here. Stevie said he wants to get into boxing. That would be amazing, right? If he did that, that would be pretty incredible to see. What's funny is, when he mentioned this in the post-fight press conferences, the original Jose Aldo matchup, I really didn't like it very much. I didn't think it made sense. It's Aldo coming off a loss, but it was happening in Brazil, UFC 250, and I got it. But when Cejudo said he was actually considering the Aldo fight next, and we knew that going in, but the reason being, he wanted to say that he had beat the greatest flyweight of all time in Demetrius Johnson, the greatest bantamweight of all time in Dominick Cruz, and the greatest featherweight of all time in Jose Aldo. That would have been a pretty damn impressive resume. So while I hated the matchup at first, now I kind of want to see if he can do it. That would be pretty impressive. So, listen, I would like to see Henry Cejudo come back, man. I think he's good for the sport, and I think he's a fantastic athlete. But it was really, honestly, the emotion by his friend and coach that made me think that, man, this might be the real deal.
Yeah, I can see that. And, it's just disappointing in the sense that this guy is so good. The strides he's taken in these past few fights are just unbelievable. He was giving questionable stoppage or not, he was giving Dominick Cruz the work in that fight. And I couldn't have seen a situation where, that was going to turn around. I felt like that was very much his fight at that point. And, it was stopped when it did. But I don't think if this is a negotiation tactic for Henry, I don't think it's the worst one. I mean, he could be giving up his belt, yes. But Henry Cejudo, I think, even if we do get a few more fights, he's not the guy that's going to be trying to break Demetrius Johnson's record for the most consecutive title defenses. He's not trying to do all that kind of stuff. So, it's even better than being, the Olympic champ, the flyweight champ, the bantamweight champ. It's being the Olympic champ, the flyweight champ, and the two-time bantamweight champ, or whatever the case may be. So I could see him coming back and making another run for that belt when the time is right and the right opponent's right. But I can understand, too, what does his legacy really gain by beating Aljamain Sterling or Peter Yan? He's got these big names on there. He's got, as you said, John, the number one flyweight, number one bantamweight. Nolan, any different kind of take from what John or I have offered when it comes to Henry Cejudo in his future?
I think you guys kind of touched on most of the major talking points here. Obviously a great athlete and a great competitor, both in wrestling and in MMA. And it almost kind of makes me happy to see somebody go out on top when they're ready like this. I mean, how many times have we seen guys stick around too long? A hell of a lot more than we've seen guys retire at the right times. We usually see our heroes, get beat up and destroyed before they even think about maybe saying the R word. But so for me, man, it would be pretty impressive. I think it would take a certain level of intelligence almost and self-awareness to see the bigger picture of his life and that he doesn't necessarily need to take these other fights for they're not going to do much to improve his legacy. He'll be a bit of an anomaly in MMA if he does walk away at this point and doesn't come back. I think his legacy is on an up and up, and he doesn't need those downfalls before he decides to call it quits. So if it is the time for him, good for him. I do believe that these thoughts are accurate. At first, like John said, I thought it was a shtick, but it seems like that this is the real deal. And if he stays on this wavelength in this train of thought, best of luck to him, man. It was a pleasure to watch him fight, and I think he'll go down in history as somebody that people don't forget.
Yeah, and I think
I'll say one thing too. The one thing that surprised me about this whole situation was that Dana White said afterwards, if we need to get another title fight, we will, and it'll be Peter Yan versus somebody. Where's Aljamain Sterling's name in there? Aljamain Sterling has to be the number one. Like, I love the idea of Aljamain Sterling versus Peter Yan, but if you're gonna go, I just know it's gonna be one guy versus so and so. Why was it not Aljamain Sterling? That one threw me for a loop right there, man. I thought that was weird that he identified Peter Yan. No disrespect to Peter Yan. Like Peter Yan a lot. He's exciting. He's fun. I think he probably should be in the title fight. But I thought Aljamain was the guy that's been there and had his hand in the air the longest.
Yeah, we do have a question there we can get into in 1 second. I did want to say one final thing about Henry based off what Nolan said. That I think is a great point. I mean, our former colleague, Fernando Pratchett, also hinted at this as well in a column on The Athletic. Like, we're not really equipped to understand a retirement like this. Like, Henry Cejudo is up there. Maybe he's completely content. He feels okay with his money. He's got a smile on his face. Like, we don't know how to comprehend that and be like, if this is for real, if he's 100% sincere, that's so foreign to us that we don't even know really how to digest it, like what to make of it. So that is really fascinating. If it is the end for Henry, all the best. He's been great to us over the years. But John, based off what you said there, a question from Alder Ursel. He says, with Aljo versus Sandhagen being discussed for June 6th, which is lacking a big fight, do you think they just slap the title fight on there quick and easy? Doesn't seem like it, because Peter Yan is not one of the name mentioned there, and it seemingly is going to be Peter Yan and somebody, which I assume would be then on Fight Island most likely, and who knows. But that somebody, are we all in agreement, needs to be Aljamain Sterling? Does anyone feel like maybe Jose Aldo slips in there, maybe Dominick Cruz gets another chance, or someone else who's maybe not right there, Sandhagen, something like that? Or do you think?
Listen, you could, that would be the easy solution, I think, is to just name that one. Listen, I like Sandhagen a lot too, and he looks like somebody that's going to challenge for a title in the very near future. But I feel like he's just one step behind those guys. I don't think he should be at the top of the list right now. Ideally for me, I like the idea of Peter Yan versus Aljamain Sterling. I think that would be a great matchup for me. Those are the two most deserving right now. But Marlon Moraes is there too. Marlon Moraes, Peter Yan, that was supposed to happen anyway. Could that still happen and that be for the title? I mean, that wouldn't be the worst. I mean, obviously Moraes had the loss to Cejudo, but once Cejudo steps aside, then maybe you could slip in there. Dominick Cruz. I don't think they're going to give Dominick Cruz an immediate title shot again, but I do think Dominick could basically be in a number one contender fight, something like that. So to answer the original question, I don't think they're just going to slap a belt on that June 6th fight, but who knows, man? The way this schedule is shuffling, that might be the only fight you can get. So if they put still on there, it wouldn't shock me to see it. I just think it'd be a little bit of a shame to be like, I mean, we're like 3 weeks out now, or whatever, and just be like, yeah, by the way, that's for a title too. How about? Forgot to tell you about that. Now it's a championship fight. I think that would be a little bit bizarre.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, so much happened at UFC 249. I think there's a lot more we could discuss, but I think I want to move on to a little bit of other business. And I think this is something that just came out within the past couple hours or so. It seems like they're starting to work already towards Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Justin Gaethje, this title unification bout. Dana White telling an ESPN radio affiliate that he is looking at that for the summer, potentially on Fight Island. I mean, I don't think Khabib is going to be ready to fight maybe late July, August at the earliest, something like that. Gaethje said post-fight that August, September would be a better fitting timeline. I guess just, John, is that kind of what you foresee happening here? I mean, I think that is the fight. I don't think we can get to Conor McGregor's Twitter rampage in a second here, but I don't think he's going to be inserting himself in that fight. I think we are going to get Khabib versus Gaethje, and I assume with Khabib's location, all that stuff, Fight Island is pretty much the only place it could be.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, I think they want to get that fight happening. I think that's the right fight to make. You can get the division moving forward, and then it does clear up some things for Conor. I think you want to buy a little bit of time for Conor McGregor. I know he said, hey, now I'm willing to fight with no crowd after what I said the night. He actually, admitted it's tough to give up a Conor McGregor gate, man. Having him fight in front of no fans, that costs a lot of money, man, because we can sell a lot of tickets. And, I think we all – in speaking to Dana, he hasn't put a date on it. But like me personally, I don't think we're going to have sporting crowds for probably the rest of the year. And I think Dana is probably, somewhere along those lines. So maybe he's accepting of it. But I think if you unification about, it makes sense. You're never going to have anybody, hotter in terms of Justin Gaethje. You're never going to have his star as high as it is right now, coming off that amazing performance, doing so when there are no sports around. I think this is the fight. Now, listen, if Conor McGregor pushes, Conor McGregor may be able to get in there. But let's not also forget that Justin Gaethje and Khabib Nurmagomedov have something in common, and that is their manager. And I can imagine that if their manager wants to shut out Conor McGregor, hey, I don't know, my client Justin Gaethje says he doesn't want to fight Conor McGregor. You know what's also funny? My client Khabib Nurmagomedov said he doesn't want to fight Conor McGregor. I don't know. What am I doing here? They're both just calling out each other. My client really wants to fight. What am I supposed to do? So, no, I think that's the fight that's going to – I think you got the UFC forces pushing it. You got the Ali Abdelaziz forcing it. And I think it's going to happen. So I think that's what we see next. Shout out to November where he said, talk about Mitchell versus Rose. It was a great fight no one is talking about. I'm not going to break it down, but I'm just going to say Doug Nasty all day long. I'm on there. Mitchell looked amazing. Bryce Mitchell's the real deal. Get him some camel shorts.
Yeah, dude, that was one of the more impressive grappling efforts we've seen in quite some time. Posted a 30-24 on the guy. Nolan, I'm going to ask you the little bit tougher question here. If we do get Gaethje and Khabib this summer, is Justin Gaethje the man to defeat Khabib Nurmagomedov?
I actually think that's an easy question, to answer. I would say no. I think that that Khabib has proven that he's a different beast, man. I think Gaethje looked great. I think his striking looked great, but I mean the grappling of Khabib, I still think that there's nobody in that division that I think that can handle that. And Tony kind of had the grappling abilities. He had the submissions off his back. He put himself into trouble to get better positions. So he at least had that going for him. But with Gaethje, I know he's got the wrestling background that he doesn't really use. It's a big mystery. Maybe he can neutralize some of it. But just stylistically, man, I think Khabib is such a difficult matchup for everyone. Eventually maybe somebody will catch him. Maybe Justin can tag him and finish him on the feet. But I think it's not going to be easy, and I don't think that it's going to be stress-free. I think just the threat of the takedown is going to be an issue. And I'm going to lean with Khabib. Maybe if I go back, watch the spectacular performance she put on, I watched it more times, maybe I'll convince myself otherwise. But just initial thoughts, man, I think that Khabib is kind of a step above everyone at this point.
It's just so hard for me to say. Justin Gaethje has 7 UFC fights. This man hasn't attempted a single takedown despite his wrestling credentials. He's got 9 bonuses, 0 submission attempts. Like, I just don't think we have enough of the information. We haven't seen this great wrestling. We saw some of it in WSOF and stuff, but We haven't seen any of it in the UFC, and let alone against a guy of Khabib Nurmagomedov's caliber. So that's just going to be really fascinating, and I think in some ways a little more compelling than the Tony Ferguson fight. But nevertheless, hopefully we get both one day. But we were talking about Conor McGregor there. This man turned back the clock with his chirps on Twitter the other day on Monday, just going after everyone. No one was safe. Habib, Gaethje, Poirier. I mean, to me, the stuff about Gaethje was the most interesting, just because he's saying, I'm going to knock your teeth out, I'm going to wear them on a necklace, like you question my ability as a father, which he hadn't addressed for several months. I mean, I think Justin Gaethje was saying that around the Donald Cerrone fight. He had put out that tweet at Conor McGregor, calling him a shit father or whatever the case may be, when all that stuff was going on about him punching the guy in the bar and stuff like that. I mean, man, did Conor McGregor really insert himself in the chat here, or what, John? I mean, how he's doing what Conor McGregor does. He's setting up all possibilities for himself. How do you think this shakes out? I mean, you addressed what I think is the overarching barrier to getting Conor McGregor back in the octagon, and that's getting him in there without a gate, without a crowd, stuff like that. Assuming they get something sorted, we get a Conor McGregor fight, say, before September or something like that, and we get Gaethje and Habib. Where does that leave Conor? Who does he fight?
To be honest, man, I'd like to see him wait for the winner of that fight. I mean, look, Conor McGregor can insert himself into any discussion he wants. I mean, if Conor wants to start calling out Francis Ngannou, saying, hey, if you ain't got a title, let's fight for the interim heavyweight title, they'll make that happen. I mean, you know what I'm saying? They'll do anything. Conor is such a big star, biggest star in the history of the sport. And for the most part, he could pretty much write his own destiny, man. He's that valuable to the company. I just don't think he should be stepping in between right now. As big of a star as he is, I just don't think he should stand in the way of this unification fight, man. I think they should make this fight happen, as you said, during the summer, and then let Conor sit out and hang around and do something in the fall. You know what I mean? Take the winner of this fight in the fall. That'll give a little more time for everybody else to shake out. And, there's a couple other fights that need to happen in the lightweight division where people can kind of step up and say that they're ready. So if I'm Conor McGregor, I wait right now. As you said, I mean, there's hurdles going on right now. Again, with the whole no audience thing, maybe the world does start to change a little bit over the next couple of months. Maybe some miracle vaccine is found for this stuff. Maybe, somehow eradicates itself. I'm not really, thinking that's going to happen, but it's maybe worth a little bit of patience. So, yeah, he went on a tirade. But the thing is, and again, Conor, a very smart guy as well, right? I mean, Conor kind of went after everybody, just throwing some polls out there and see what kind of, gets set. Normally, once he starts dialing it in and he kind of sees the path, he'll really go after one person. I think he was just kind of, scatter shooting out there and just seeing what popped up. I'd like to see him wait and see him maybe perhaps step in for a title at the end of the year, but don't get in the way of this fight.
Interesting. And Nolan, as Julian Murray says here in the chat, Nate Diaz told them girls to shut up because they're on the same team. Nate Diaz, does he maybe fit in here? I mean, we saw Conor McGregor telling him to sign the contract. Nate was left out of the full-blown Twitter rant, but there was an interaction on Instagram there the day prior. Dana White pretty much saying when he was asked about it at the press conference, there's not much to that. They're just talking shit, I believe was his exact quote. But do you think, given the fact we are getting a Habib and Gaethje fight, maybe this is time for the McGregor-Diaz trilogy?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that is the fight to make. If it actually isn't in the works or being at least thought about or discussed, I think that's a shame, because right now, I can't remember the last time that there's been a better opportunity for McGregor and Diaz to have that trilogy. It makes sense. It's a money fight. People are going to watch the shit out of that. And then on the other hand, it makes sense for the division. I mean, you got Conor, who's kind of in a weird limbo position now with fighting Gaethje, and that's going to be the next fight. So why not give him a fight like Diaz? That, I mean, I think at this point in time, most people would favor Conor in that fight. It seems like a pretty win-win scenario for everybody involved to have that trilogy go on and have a big title fight between Justin Gaethje, who's red hot right now, and Habib, who's obviously got his fan base. I think that's a perfect fight to make. And I know Conor didn't really necessarily mention it in his Twitter rant, but Diaz clapped back. So I think that, I wouldn't want to be at the negotiating table with those two and have to sit and try to figure out what's going on with the contracts and dates and things like that. But if the UFC can kind of sift through those logistics, man, I think that's a perfect fight to have in the meantime.
And I think that leads into another question here by Joao Pinheiro. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. What about Tony versus Dustin. I mean, I think we're almost matchmaking lightweight here. What do we have? Do we have Gaethje and Khabib, Conor and Nate, and then Tony and Dustin Poirier? Does that sound good to you guys? Nolan, do you think that's the one to make there with those two other guys?
Yeah, 100%. Even before McGregor suggested this, I think that was the fight that a lot of us were looking at. I don't know if Dustin will want to fight sooner, but I don't know what other options he has. I mean, he's dismissed the Diaz fight up into the rebooking up until this point pretty much every time he's been asked about it. So I don't think that that's a realistic option. And, man, I don't think he really wants to fight backwards that much. So let's do it. Let's put Poirier and Ferguson together. Let's put Conor and Nate together and have Khabib and Gaethje fight. And, come September, we could have all three of those fights booked. We could see them and see how things play out and reassess from there. It seems like the matchmaking sometimes is really difficult for us to figure out, or there's a couple options here, and what if we put this piece there? But for those three matchups, I think that makes the most sense right down the line for those 6 fighters.
Yeah. Hey, what about my man Dan Hooker? What are y'all gonna do with my man Dan Hooker? You just leaving him out there all by himself? Come on, the Hangman's put in some work too. He deserves a big fight
for sure. Yeah, not trying to take that Poirier fight away from him. I mean, I'd love to, who I'd love to see someone get one of these names we're talking about, though, is Charles Oliveira. I saw Kevin from Chicago saying Conor should fight Charles Oliveira. I wouldn't get your hopes up for that one, but I do think Charles Oliveira, 7-fight winning streak, absolutely deserves a big opportunity in the lightweight division. But we're 45 minutes deep here. I want to start wrapping it up, guys. And I think we do need to talk a little bit about the fight card that is going down tomorrow night, UFC on ESPN Plus 29. The main event, Glover Teixeira and Anthony Smith. I love how this fight came together. Anthony Smith tells me the story back in December of when he was making his first UFC run, cut after one fight, gets his knee blown out by Braga Neto in Brazil with a knee bar, I think loses in the first round. His team flies out of Brazil before him. He's going through the airport trying to get his way home. He can't speak a lick of Portuguese. He doesn't know where he's going. And, the angel upon his shoulder, Glover Teixeira, comes and finds him out of nowhere and directs him through customs and gets him out of Brazil, carrying his bags with a blown out knee. And here they are, 7 or so years later fighting. I think that's just a really nice story. Two of the nicest guys in the game, very insightful. But what does this fight mean, John, in terms of the light heavyweight division, where the winner goes? I mean, John Jones, from all indications, seemingly going to fight Dominick Cruz, Jan Blachowicz next. And, maybe that leaves the odd man out for the winner of this fight? Or where do you think this fight really folds into the top of the 205 division?
I think it's an important fight, but not so much as for what the winner will have immediately next, but what the loser will not have. You know what I mean? And I think that's the real key here. Two of the nicest guys, as you said, in the sport, two fantastic fighters. For Glover Teixeira, kind of that last run to the top, right? He's been saying, look, I may be the old man, but I still got it. Man, you come up short here, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a really, really difficult position to get back there. And then, similar position for Anthony Smith. I mean, do you still belong at the very, very top of this division? You got to prove it here. So, I think this is a key fight, a very meaningful fight. But again, I don't think it necessarily guarantees anybody anything moving forward in the winnings position because of exactly what you said. It seems there's a couple title fights lined up already. However, the loser of this will take a serious tumble down the path a little bit. So this is a key moment for both guys.
Yeah, and a comment from David Duarte there, based a little bit off what John said. Everybody's sleeping on old Glover. He's still dangerous. Nolan, this guy has won 3 fights in a row against, the younger crop of the 205-pound division. Saw some people, giving Anthony Smith, the matchmaker, some flack. Why is Anthony Smith fighting Glover Teixeira? I think a lot of it came down to just who was available. Obviously, this fight was supposed to happen a few weeks ago, I think April 25th originally. So, we're a little bit past that date here too. Things have obviously changed, but where do you rank Glover Teixeira's chances? I think he's definitely earned an opportunity like this, but do you think he has a good avenue to victory here?
Yeah, it's tough to say because Glover in a couple of fights, on the streak that he's on, did get beat up a little bit. He got beat up against Carl Roberson. He got beat up against, I think Serkinov was winning that fight before Glover pulled off the submission, and Jan Kudalaba was having his moments. So it's tough to say. But it's tough to deny where Glover is. He keeps winning. That's the result here. And I understand people look at the fight on paper and say, hey, Anthony Smith, still a guy that's at the top of this division. He hung in there with John Jones for 5 rounds. And Glover's a guy that suffered his fair share of losses. He's been knocked out before. Maybe in a lot of people's eyes is on the tail end of his career. But Glover keeps winning, and you can't deny that. He's earned a big fight. and he's proven that, technically speaking, maybe his body isn't there, his not as fast or strong as he used to be. But man, in terms of technique and in terms of skill and smarts, and wits, I think he's right up there in the division. He's been schooling these guys. If you make a mistake for a split second, he's going to make you pay for it. So it's an interesting matchup. I think you can't sleep on Glover, even if he's not the peak Glover that we once saw. I think he's a guy that still is just as smart as ever, and he's got the really high fight IQ. So Smith can't take him lightly. I do favor Anthony Smith in this fight. I think he should get it done inside the distance, but you don't want to count Glover Teixeira out, or you're going to make a big mistake.
For sure. And Max El Kakui Holloway there asks, does the winner fight Santos or John? I'll take that one. I think yes. I mean, I want to see this Santos fight, Smith and Santos too. On the virtual media day or whatever we had, he told a great story about, how that fight, was a key loss in his career. He still has the tweet pinned to his profile on the night he lost that fight, basically admitted that was one of the lowest points in his career, and he thinks it would be a nice gauge in his development to get that one back. Talking a little bit about this card some more, Joseph Boza, or basically says, I think a fight going under the radar tomorrow is Chase Sherman, the Villanilla Gorilla, coming back against Isaac Villanueva. What is one fight tomorrow that is not getting coverage? Nolan, I believe you broke that fight, right? Chase Sherman's return to the UFC?
Yeah, that's a pretty good one, man. I mean, Chase, for people that followed his first UFC stint, didn't have the most success. He was given a fair amount of chances and unfortunately came up on the short end of the stick in most of them. But since that time, he's gone back to the regional scene. He became the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship heavyweight champ, and he also went 3-0 in MMA with 3 finishes. So Chase Sherman is a guy that usually brings it. He's exciting, for the prelim level heavyweight guys. I think that this should be a good fight. And Ike Villanueva is a guy that, he started out his career. It looked like he was going to be kind of a regional journeyman, and he turned a corner, man, and he's an exciting guy to watch. He's gotten a bunch of knockouts. I'm sure his fighting style is a big part of the reason that he's in the UFC right now. Fury FC champion. I think that is a fight that's going under the radar. There's a few of them on here, but I like that selection. I think that's an apt analysis from whoever commented that.
Yeah, that fight has Greg Hardy's next opponent written all over it, but I guess we'll see. John, you're on the ground there. Tomorrow, obviously, we talked a little bit about the main event, but outside of that, anything you're hyped for?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I love the main card as a whole, if I'm being honest with you. Ben Rothwell versus Vince St. Preux, seeing OSP move up to heavyweight. How does he handle that, man? He came in a lot heavier than I expected him to today, so he's not going to be that terribly outsized. But I'm still interested to see if he can handle that against Ben Rothwell as a big dude. Drew Dober versus Alexander Hernandez has fireworks written all over it, man. And, they've got kind of an interesting tension between those two. I mean, Dober's kind of this very intense guy that's always got a big smile on his face. Meanwhile, Alexander Hernandez, I know a lot of people hate him. I love the guy, man. I think he's just a psycho, dude. And I love the fact that he is who he is. Ray Borg versus Ricky Simon, that's just a great fight right there. Ray Borg up at bantamweight, maybe his permanent home. He says at this point, look, he'll take whatever they give him. He thinks he still belongs at flyweight, but he'll fight wherever he's told. One that got some real flavor today was Carl Roberson versus Marvin Vettori. If you haven't seen their face-off, go back and watch that. Roberson missed weight. He came in at 187.5. And by the way, came in very, very early in the 2-hour window, man. I think he was in the first 15 minutes or so. Kind of that unwritten rule, I think, among fighters, if you're going to make weight, if you're going to not make weight, you're going to miss, at least wait till the end of the thing. Know that let me know that you suffered as long as possible. And Carl didn't do that. And then when they had their face off, Marvin started yapping at him a little bit. Carl started yapping back, and Marvin said, man, you didn't even make weight. You're already broken. What are you talking about? It was a good little stare down. So that main card has got fireworks written all over it. I think there's some great matchups there. And then, some fun stuff on the prelims. Michael Johnson, Thiago Moises should be a lot of fun. Anytime Andre Arlovski's in action, I love watching it, man. That guy's a legend. So, listen, man, we don't have quite the star power we had on Saturday night, but I still think we've got some matchups that are going to provide some entertainment for us. And besides, the hell else are you going to watch? There ain't nothing else on, so you might as well tune in and watch these.
For sure. And not that I'm rooting for anyone to win or anything, but I do hope we get to hear some post-fight from Michael Johnson, just because this is a guy who's fought Justin Gaethje and Tony Ferguson. I'd be curious to hear what he thought of what went down on Saturday. And you mentioned the prelims there, John. Julian Murray says, I think Arlovski gets slept and retired. The dude's 74. He's not quite that old, but pretty interesting of note. I think if Arlovsky loses this fight, he'll have 20 defeats in MMA competition, which is kind of crazy. 20 losses is more fights than some guys. I don't even think Henry Cejudo has 20 fights, period. So it's kind of nuts how long this guy's been around. I mean, most fights in heavyweight history at 33, I believe. And he welcomes Felipe Lins to the UFC, a 2018 PFL champion. I think these guys used to train together. Arlovsky told us, I think it was in Norfolk back in whenever that was, February or something, that Felipe Lins was training with him and basically said, I think I'm going to talk to the UFC about signing there soon. And this was like a few months prior. And then Arlovsky was like, oh, that's great. And next thing he knew, he was signed and they got offered to fight each other. And he was like, bro, like, what the hell's that about? So you can see, John, Andre Arlovsky well, you can see how that would irritate that man, right?
Oh, absolutely, man. Andre's a character, man. And, I know a lot of people doubt his chin and doubt his age, but I mean, the guy is a legend, man. This dude was a massive star in his heyday. And he's still just a good dude, man. The guy is a prankster. He's a jokester, as serious and intense as he is. He's just a fun guy to be around. Haven't really gotten to see him much this week since we're all quarantined and not allowed to talk to the athletes in person. But yeah, I can see how that annoy him a little bit. So it's kind of funny if we find out he called for that. Like, this dude just always hated you and said he wanted to beat you up when you guys used to train together. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
For sure, pretty funny. And as we wrap it up here. Record time on this chat. I appreciate you guys joining me. John, you obviously are on the ground down there. Can you just lay out for us? Obviously, we have a fight card tomorrow night, but what the rest of the week looks like for you, because obviously you're going to be there still a few more days until Sunday.
Yeah, no, we still got plenty of MMA action this week, man. Wednesday is going to be fights. Of course, we'll have full coverage of MMA Junkie. The whole team's working. We do get to see the fighters post-fight. So if you didn't see the UFC 249 post-fight coverage, they actually do in-person interviews. Although we in the media are all social distance in the back. Everybody's got their own tables, that sort of thing. So that'll be Wednesday. Thursday will be another one of those virtual media days. I'm sure people have seen the footage by now. It's kind of, basically a Zoom meeting like we're all doing this week. But I think that's going to be the future, man. I think it's going to be like that for a lot of time, to be honest with you. And then Friday will be the weigh-ins for the next card. We'll have the official weigh-ins in the morning. They've been doing face-offs immediately after at 11 a.m. And then Saturday we'll have another fight card, full coverage there. And then I fly home on Sunday. I know Nolan and I were talking earlier. It sounds like both of us are hearing the same thing, that the tentative plan right now for that fight card on May 23rd is probably not going to happen May 23rd. It is going to happen May 30th, most likely in Las Vegas. I did clarify earlier today with UFC President Dana White that even if they do go on the 23rd, it will not happen here in Jacksonville, Florida. It'll be in Las Vegas. But it sounds like they're having a little trouble getting everything going in Vegas. So it sounds like that May 23rd fight card is probably going to happen on May 30th. And that should be, if all things go well, the first UFC event at the UFC Apex there in Las Vegas, which is going to be their domestic home for the foreseeable future. So we'll start getting very, very familiar with that facility coming up soon.
Awesome. That's great information. And hopefully this has been a crazy week stemming from this event. I didn't even get to touch on everything I want to. We didn't even get into this whole Daniel Cormier, Stipe Miocic heavyweight title nonsense, but we are out of time. We'll try to do another one of these later in the week, maybe on Friday after weigh-ins again. But really appreciate everyone joining us, asking questions and everything. And of course, to you guys for taking a little time today to do this. And keep it locked to MMAJunkie.com. We will have tons of coverage from UFC Jacksonville, UFC Jax, UFC on ESPN Plus 29, whatever you want to call the fight card tomorrow. Appreciate everyone joining us. Have a good day.